I got a feeling the sound is not going to be very good here today. A lot of wind. We haven't had any frost yet, but I think tonight's going to be the night. It was down to 3 degrees last night, and looked at two different forecasts this morning. One gives 0 degrees for tonight, and the other one gives -4 degrees, so we'll definitely have frost. What we're looking here is an heirloom or heritage apple variety called Pumpkin Sweet. That's the name that I bought it under anyway. It goes under many different names. Most of them have sweet in the name. I've had it for many years. It's a good storage apple. I do eat some myself, like you would eat a dessert apple or whatever that you buy in Macintosh, whatever, at a store. But it's very hard. It will store for a long period of time. But somebody that I follow on YouTube, Ivan Kinsman, depending on how he pronounces his name. I'll put a link below the video here. They're in Poland. I think the man himself is English and his wife is Polish. But anyway, they don't put up a lot of videos, but the videos that they do put up are very interesting. They just did one where they were preserving pears out of their garden. And I thought that a similar process would work quite well on these apples. They're a very firm, as I said, storage apple. They make a great pie, also good in applesauce and that sort of thing. But I thought preserved the way that they did their pears would work quite well, so I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to use a little bit different seasoning. They used cloves, which would be very nice with pears. I like cinnamon and I like nutmeg with apples and apple pie or whatever, so I'm going to put a bit of each in the syrup. Anyway, I'll show you the process right after I harvest some of these apples. I'll continue harvesting. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but I like this long-handled apple picker. This is a standard size apple tree, which is still growing. It's probably 15-20 years old, but it gets taller every year, and like everything, it's always better the other side of the fence with apples. They always look nicer on top. Anyway, I've shut this thing down right now. I'm sure the wind is raising havoc with the microphone. Just give you a little closer look at this apple picker. It's basically just a muslin bag, and on top this wire cage affair goes. The stem of the apple goes in one of these areas, and you just give a pull, and it takes the apple off without bruising it or knocking it to the ground. Works very well when you've got tall apple trees like I've got. As I said, the variety is called Pumpkin Sweet. It's a hard storage apple, very firm apple, but the great thing about it seems to be very disease resistant. Like these apples, to me, look very good. There's no wormholes, there's no blight or cracking or blistering or any of that sort of thing, and I don't spray with anything. That's just the way the apple grows. It seems to be very hardy. It stays green. It doesn't really get too much color. It's got that little blush of pink or sort of orange color on the shoulders. That's about as much color as ever shows up on one of them. Interesting apple. It stays on the tree all winter. Of course, with freezing and thawing, they rot and turn brown, the ones that are left on the tree, but they don't fall on the ground. And when some of the early birds return in the spring, the robins and the cedar waxwings, for example, are very glad to see them there. They tear the apple open and eat the seeds that are still on the inside, so it's also a good wildlife food. Anyway, I'll continue picking apples and show you my basket full when I finish. It didn't take any time at all to fill the basket. Nice big apples. Put a hand in there again, I guess, to give you an idea of the size. It's a shame for them to go to waste. I'll only use a small portion of what's on the tree, so if there is anybody in the local area that watches my videos and would like to have some apples for making pies or whatever with, just give me a call. I'd be more than happy to help you pick them. Now the apples are picked. While I've been picking, my lady friends here have been out for their quality time outside of their enclosure. Still no eggs. I think perhaps it's still a bit early for eggs. But they are starting to look more like hens all the time, with more red combs and wattles, making very mature hen cackling sounds. Anyway, let's get back to the apples. This is being taken out the window beside my door. I come in the house to get my lunch, and the hens are following me. The other day I was sitting down back and noticed that 5 of them were missing. I came up this side of the house to find that 5 of them were up on the little deck here beside the kitchen door. I guess the idea is I visit them in their house, they'd like to come visit me in mine. Now to get back to making the preserved apples. The first part of the process is to make a simple syrup, which is just sugar and water with some flavorings. 1 kilogram of sugar, white sugar. 1 liter of water. Flavorings, I'm going to use cinnamon, so I'm going to put in 1 cinnamon bark stick, which can be removed later before you put them in the jars, and a few grinds of freshly ground nutmeg. This won't be able to be removed, so it'll end up in the jars, but that's okay. I love the taste of nutmeg, especially with apples. Probably enough. And this goes on the stove to simmer, sort of start to come to a boil, whatever, for a few minutes. And once you think the flavor is infused enough, you can remove the cinnamon stick. As I peeled the apples, I'm dropping them into a bowl of water with citrus juice in it. I only had half of 1 lemon. I think that was enough, so I squeezed a lime and put that in there as well. I don't think it makes any difference which citric acid you use, but that will keep the apple from going brown until I get it sliced up and in the bottles, and it really doesn't impart any flavor to the apple. If it does, it's very slight. You know, if you could ever notice it. It just keeps the apple itself from going brown. This one's got a brown spot on it, but it's one that I picked up off the ground. That's just a bruise where it fell off the tree. Anyway, that is that part of the process. I've had a request from one of my followers to do a video just on gadgets. I am a gadgeteer, I guess. I love gadgets, and I'm seriously considering that. I might put together a video with 8 or 10 different gadgets that I have, kitchen gadgets mostly. This one is a very inexpensive apple peeler made by Starfrit, and it does a very good job. The more expensive peelers slice at the same time that they're peeling, but I've had one of those and it broke. I lost it, and I don't have it anymore. And then this comes with it for, I'll demonstrate that later, for slicing the apple into sections. But that's the Starfred apple peeler in operation anyway. And this is the thing that cores the apple and divides it into sections. Takes a bit of strength to get down through it. Once it's done, you have the apple all in, I think, the size sections that I will want for putting it in jars. And the core has been nicely removed down the center here. By the way, these cores and peelings will not be going to waste. They'll be a treat for the hens later on today. I'm sure they'll love them. They've had a couple of apple cores before that I've thrown into them, and they really enjoy them. My bowl is starting to get full of apples, so I've decided to start packing the jars as I go. They don't have to be sealed right away because they're going to go in a canner, and that will, to cook the apples and do the sealing process both in the canner, so it isn't critical that they get sealed up immediately. But it's one jar full, and I'm just trying to judge how much syrup I'm going to need, how many jars. I think based on the amount of syrup that I used for that one jar, I should get maybe 5, possibly 6 jars out of it. Anyway, this is just a test run. I want to see if I like this. If I do, there's a lot more apples that I can preserve later on. There was enough syrup that I did 7 bottles. Actually, I could have done an 8th bottle. There was syrup enough left, but my canner will only hold 7 at one time, so I stopped it at 7 jars. If you look at Ivan and Magda's channel and see the way that they did their Pears, they do their canning heating process in the oven. I know that's acceptable. A lot of people do it. I've just never tried it before, and I'm not sure of the accuracy of the temperature of my oven, so I have visions of exploding bottles in my oven anyway. So I'm going to do mine in the canner. I've been doing some reading. I can't find anything that tells me how long I should can a raw apple. It says about boiling them first and putting them in syrup and canning them, how long to do that, but these are raw in syrup and I want them to cook, so I'm going to let it go for 45 minutes and see how that works. Once it has come back to a full rolling boil, I'll lower them down into the water here now anyway. That's it, they're completely covered by at least 2 or 3 inches of water, I guess. Once that returns to the boil, I'm going to time it for 45 minutes. The apples have come to a boil. While they're boiling away, I've come out to visit with the chickens again and bring them their apple peelings and apple cores. They're kind of tentative about going over to try it, but I think they're slowly discovering that it's food. They've had 45 minutes in the canner, boiling away, and I was expecting what happened here. They shrunk as they were cooking, so all the apples have floated up off the bottom of the jar. But I don't think there's any way of avoiding that. I packed the jars as solidly full as I could, but they give off some of their fluid and shrink and float up during the processing. But anyway, so far they're looking good. When they've cooled down enough that I can handle, I'm going to put at least 1 jar in the refrigerator and chill it down so that I can open it and try it immediately to see if I like the texture or the flavor or whatever, to determine whether or not I want to put up more of them. Well, they've pretty much cooled down. I've had this particular bottle in the refrigerator for a while. It was nicely sealed anyway. I don't know. Fish one out here, I guess, and see what they're like. Quite soft. has a nice flavor. I think if it was done with any other kind of an apple, like a regular dessert apple or whatever, it would probably be quite mushy, because these apples tend to be quite firm. But I think I might do a few more jars of it. It's quite nice. Well, thank you for watching.